Greetings, everyone. We're grateful you're all here this afternoon. I just want to welcome you all to our Pathway to Peace Interfaith Symposium.
Our three panelists will each make a presentation of about 15 minutes. No one has decided yet what we do if they go over that. We have lots of ideas, but then they will engage each other in, no, they won't. You didn't want to do that, did you? Then you guys will engage them in discussion, questions, and we'll ask you to keep those questions and comments direct and straightforward and to the point and kind and civil, etc. Finally, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Haris Zafar. He's the national spokesman for the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in the U.S. How'd I do? I practiced. He and his wife, Yasameen, and their 3 young children are a part of a mosque in Portland. Mr. Zafar graduated from the University of Oregon with a BS in computer science and business administration in 2001. In the same year, in the aftermath of September 11th, Mr. Zafar, only 22 at the time, began to receive invitations to speak about Islam and the cause of peace. That has led in the interviewing years to his growing public role across the country. He has had the distinction of having been interviewed by many well-known journalists and news anchors, including Wolf Blitzer, Megyn Kelly, and Bill O'Reilly. In the case of O'Reilly, it was less of an interview than an argument. But Mr. Zafar bested him. These years of speaking about Islam led to his remarkably clear and helpful book, Demystifying Islam, Tackling the Tough Questions. In the introduction, he talks about the many discussions of Islam he's had over the years in interfaith groups and the inevitable conflicts that have come up in those discussions and the way that he has been shaped by those who disagreed with him and challenged him. And he asks there in the acknowledgments God's forgiveness for any excesses on his part in those discussions and for God's blessing on those people who challenged him. That is a mark of a man of open and true man of faith.
I meet his brother Esau in the book of Genesis, afraid what will happen. The last time they were together, Esau threatened him for his life and said, if I see you again, I'll kill you. He struggles in the middle of the night with something. Some say it's an angel. Some say it is Esau. Some say it is a human messenger. And as he limps away, the angel says, you will no longer be Jacob, you will be Yisrael.
Welcome. Thank you, everybody, for welcoming me here today. There's a great burden of being the first speaker, but there's a great burden of being the final speaker as well. Not only do you run the risk of repeating something you may have already heard, but most likely to put someone to sleep as well. So I'll try my best not to do either of those. I do appreciate this opportunity. I want to thank the First United Methodist Church of Fort Worth for this opportunity to be in your home. I know we are your guests, and that in itself is an extension of peace. And I hope that you will find us to be gracious guests in your home today, and not just today, but going forward as well. And my gratitude also to the rabbi for his presence and participation here as well. It is indeed an honor to not only be in someone else's home, but also to speak about a very important topic, which sometimes is gleaned over because it seems very altruistic: peace. How do we establish peace? But it's incredibly important. It's a major issue of the world today. Fear and disorder is found all around the world, around us, and around the country as well. Armor and ways of destruction are commonplace. People are enemies of other people everywhere and are inflicting atrocities all around us. Terrorism is being carried out in the name of some perverted view of faith, and terrorism is being carried out in the name of stopping terrorism. Now, Islam comes in the spotlight often because of the actions of some Muslims. And that's why it's important for us as Muslims to be very frank about that. When bad people do bad things, you have to call them out, regardless if their name sounds like ours or if they claim to be of the same faith. This leads a lot of people to the question of whether Islam has any relation to peace because of the actions of people like ISIS and Taliban and Hezbollah and Boko Haram, and you could take your variable pick of these different groups. And there's a reason why Muslims are so loud in condemning these acts of violence. And we within the Ahmadiyya Muslim community could be a simple case study. That to consistently and continually condemn these acts because they're committed either in the name of our faith or by someone whose name sounds like our faith. And we don't do it just because we're good people, we're decent people, or we live in fear in this country. It's because we cite Islamic grounds for condemning the absence of peace and those who rob peace from those around us. It is a violation of Islam's commandments towards peace and the protection of freedoms. In Islam, the word peace doesn't only mean to be at rest or in some sort of common place without a perfect understanding with others. It's not just a simple matter of living in nonviolence, of tolerating others. It also means, in Islam, submission. According to the Quranic concept of peace, no peace on earth can be ever conceived, not to mention established, by any human effort. It cannot be even conceived theoretically without man finding God, the Creator, without recognizing the hand of the Creator universally at work in nature. So God is really the ultimate reality who created humans according to his own attributes. And peace, according to Islam, means that balance between our human attributes and God's attributes, and how much overlap there is. That's the definition of internal peace within Islam. How well do your attributes align to God's? In Islam, the journey to peace begins with the attainment of peace with our Lord, with the Creator. And for this, you have to understand his attributes. We have to know what he is. And if there is a God, he has to be an external reality. And if he's an external reality, then he has to introduce himself in some way. And that is actually what happens in all divine religions. It was God who revealed himself to mankind. It was never a man or a woman who, through his or her own efforts, found God without the help of God. And God is defined alike in almost all religions. The concept of God is pretty alike and is expressed as perfect goodness. Human attributes, then, have to come in consonance with those attributes. That's the power of peace. When we say God is all good, when we say he is compassionate, when he is merciful, when he is our friend, when he is the forgiver, when he is the one who comforts, then our job of establishing peace within ourselves first is to say, are we compassionate? Do we forgive? Do we comfort others, regardless of whether or not they deserve the comfort? This is the power that peace has, according to Islam, that if you have peace in your heart, you're able to see in others not only the same humanity, but the same spirituality as yourself. You see the same humanity that you see in your children, in your parents, in your loved ones. To be in peace means to be purified from hate, from animosity, from fear, from jealousy, from grudges, and even from revenge. So Islam demands us that to be a believer means to accept the wholeness of God and this universality of his message. That if you consider yourself chosen, that we're going to heaven and no one else can because they're not in our club, there's no way for you to actually live in peace with someone else. It teaches to reject this notion that any people are chosen, spiritually speaking. Now, the spirituality of humans, according to our tradition, is the most significant matter. It's the thing which differentiates us from other creation, is our level of spirituality that God has infused in us. So Of course, it's important to identify the social equality, the economic equality, the political and cultural equality with others. But the matter of greatest significance and the greatest importance is whether or not you see others as spiritually equal as yourself, as having the equal access, the equal right to heaven, equal right to God, equal right to calling themselves children of God as yourself. This is a paramount, according to Islam, which is why we abhor hearing any Muslim say otherwise. There's a verse in the Holy Quran in which, and the Holy Quran, which is our scripture, is what we believe to be the direct word of God. So when we read verses from the Quran, we believe it to be God speaking. And in chapter 2 of the Holy Quran, God tells us, surely the believers, referring to Muslims, and the Jews, and the Christians, and the Sabians referring to those of non-Abrahamic traditions, whichever party from among these truly believes in God and the last day, and does good deeds, shall have their reward with their Lord, and no fear shall come upon them, nor shall they grieve. So this concept of having a monopoly over heaven is something that not only is foreign according to the teachings of our scripture, but also something that robs us of our peace. Because then really what you're doing is you're tolerating someone else. I'll let you live next to me, but I know you're going to hell. How do you live in peace with somebody like that? Do you really have peace in your heart knowing that they are doomed to hell forever? There's actually verses in the Quran that actually speak to our treatment of others and to see them as people who have been recipients of divine law. They may not accept the Quran, but they are recipients of divine law, and to allow them to judge themselves accordingly. In chapter 5 of the Holy Quran, when it says, surely we sent down the Torah, wherein was guidance and light. By it, the prophets who were obedient to us judged for the Jews, as did the godly people and those learned in the law. Doesn't say, but now you got to replace it. Now take that away. It doesn't say just let them think that they're okay, but this is the real law. It says that in that revelation, there is guidance, there is light. So to honor that tradition. In the same chapter, we find God telling us, thou shalt surely find those who say we are Christians, to be the nearest of them in love to the believers. And this Arabic word, I don't think is really translated. The translation doesn't do it justice. The Arabic word, which is translated as love, refers to the type of love that you'd have with a brother. That's the type of love you will find between yourself and those who say we are Christians. So Islam doesn't leave any room for us to have this spiritual superiority, that we're spiritually elevated than others, that we see each other as members of the same family, as children of the same God. And this is critical for peace. After all, how do you live in peace with someone if you think their God is different than yours? If you think that their God is not real? If you think that they are destined for hell simply because they adhere to a different faith? How do you live in peace with somebody like that? You can't truly be at peace and live in peace when you're in that state. Islam teaches a message of universal justice and peace, and it's something you'll find that's in consonance with other faith traditions as well. The pastor also had just spoken about justice and peace and how they're intrinsically linked with one another. It teaches us not only tolerance, but mutual respect. There's actually a story in which the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was sitting amongst his companions when a funeral procession began to pass by at a bit of a distance, right? Not right next to them, but at a bit of a distance. This funeral procession began. And as a mark of respect, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, immediately stood up and faced towards the procession. Seeing this, one of the companions was surprised, and he mustered up the courage to say, Prophet of God, this funeral procession is for a Jewish person. And hearing this, the Prophet Muhammad said, was he not a human? Respect for all humans is obligatory. End quote. This is the power of peace. something that fosters that type of love and respect in your heart for someone else who's different than you. They don't adhere to the same faith. They may not dress the same. Their food may not smell the same. It compels us to show the respect to others that we would want for ourselves. This is the power of living in peace in one's heart, which is the required fertile soil for the characteristics and qualities that develop mutual respect in society, and they help develop peace. The urgent need of the time is that instead of thinking ill of others or holding any misconception of others, all those who desire peace should join together and discuss how cruel and unjust elements can be stopped. We don't have to pretend like we're the same. We don't have to pretend like we're one kind of stew and we're all different cups of the same stew. I stole that from a pastor. I should give him credit for that. But that we are, as he explained, different ingredients of that stew. That we are still different, yet not inferior. Defaming or unjustly attacking anyone is not the right way. And when I look at the world right now, and I think you would admit that the direction the world is moving suggests that the dark shadow of war is being cast over a very large part of the globe. If war breaks out, then countless innocent people, men and women, children, young and old, will all suffer, and many lives will be lost. The destruction will be greater than that which was witnessed by World War II. There are many more people in the world now with greater number of weapons of mass destruction and countries that have developed a thirst for war. Under these circumstances, the destruction would be manifold. The key to peace is to stop cruelty, is to stop oppression wherever it occurs, and replace it and speak loudly about justice and equality. Only when this principle is followed will global peace develop. And this will only happen when the people of the world come together and recognize their one common creator. We may know him by different names. We may use the word Allah. But what we believe in Islam is, when we look at the other scriptures as well, is you may refer to that God as Yahweh. You may refer to him as God, or you may refer to him as Allah. But we accept them to be all the same God. And when we look at the one verse of the New Testament that was left in its original Aramaic, when Jesus of Nazareth, peace be upon him, was hanging on the cross, and he says, "Ella, Ella, lama sabachthani." My God, why have you forsaken me? We understand as an evidence that the word that he used to describe God or to refer to God in the Aramaic language, Ella, we believe to be the same root of the Arabic word Allah. And to think that they're two different gods is to rob ourselves of internal peace. What I'll close with, because I was noticing the time, what I'll close with is how we're reminded within our tradition, our specific tradition in Islam, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. And the founder of our community would always remind us of this concept of this unity of human beings across the religious spectrum. And when he came more than 120 years ago, he brought this message. And I'll close with his quote, where he says, "We belong to the same denomination of God's species and are referred to as humans. Furthermore, as inhabitants of the same country, we are mutual neighbors. This requires that we become friends to each other with purity of heart and sincerity of intentions. We should dispose kindly to each other and be mutually helpful. In the difficulties pertaining to religious and worldly matters, we should exercise such sympathy towards others as if we had become limbs of the same body." End quote. So I hope with this, we can take this understanding beyond conceptual, but practical, of when we deal with one another across the religious, ethnic, political, cultural, racial boundaries. Do we look at each other with adoration and someone that we can learn from? Or do we look at each other with derision, even if we don't express it? Do we see each other as equals or on different planes? And I would submit that once we can push back against those who seek to create a caste system, so to speak, of who is righteous in the eyes of God, then we will establish that true peace in our heart, and that can emanate outside of our heart as well. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you, gentlemen, so much for these very helpful comments that you've made. We have time for a lot of time for discussion. I would like to invite you first, though, to stand up and just greet your neighbor with the word of peace. You could say peace to you, shalom, salam alaikum, but greet each other with a word of peace. All right, friends, let's come back together. We now have about 35 minutes for question and discussion. And I know there are 2 mics that are out there, so we'll watch and I'll help call on people. And in a minute, I think I'm going to come down there. I really love towering over you, ha ha ha. But I think I'd like to be a little closer. I want to begin asking questions, and then I'll take my answer as I go down. So this is about I know you're all fathers, and you've all worked with children and youth in your religious communities, and I'm a mother and have done the same. And I think a lot about how do we shape a new generation for peace. And I know when I was 9, I was in a terrorist attack in Jerusalem, and it was the first day of the trip. In every picture after that, I have a slingshot in my hand. And I picked up rocks everywhere. And I told people it was a rock collection, but it was really an arsenal. Now, my parents looked terrified in all these pictures, but I looked perfectly happy because I had a story. You know, a story of David and Goliath, and I knew my part, and I had my slingshots and my rocks. I was perfectly fine. But this all occurred to me only later, and just to think about the ways that we're shaped by those stories of our faith, the way that we're shaped by those in ways that we're not even aware of. And what stories do we tell? How do we respond to our children, to our youth, in ways that help them grow in peace?
And what I'll add is, and I'm a younger parent. My children are 8, 6, and 4. And so, especially with the 8-year-old, but even now with the 6-year-old, make it a point to explain that, there are people that do some bad things out there. And so sometimes bad things happen to even good people. I try to be careful not to say that there are bad people out there, but that there are bad things that happen. And how do we deal with that? And even, the 8-year-old, even starting to have the frank conversation that, hey, some of these people that are doing bad things, they say they're Muslim. And, we say we're Muslim. So how do you feel about that? Did you know that there are some people that their house burned down today? Someone whose father died today? And to have that conversation of what does that mean to us? And what is it that we can learn from that? And how do we help others as a result? And to kind of prepare ourselves. And to make sure that, and I do that because the underlying message is not to let that make us malicious or vindictive or have a slanted view of the world. That this is going to happen. How do you recover from that? And so that's been, not that all of our conversations are that serious. Sometimes we talk about Captain America, but that's how I try to maybe address these type of matters.
How do you feel welcome and not different when you're greeting someone that you don't know?
That's a good way to get me to stop. Did my wife tell you to do that? I think actually smiling is actually it's more powerful than people may think. The Prophet Muhammad had once said that even a smile is charity. So when you go around, if you don't have any real charity to give, at least give a smile. I think it's also approaching someone without judgment and without pity. It's more of a genuine, you're a human, I'm a human, and making them feel welcome just in your presence. I don't think you have to do anything particular. There's so many different cultures out there. There's no way you can learn the traditional norms of all those cultures. So I think it's just really a matter of, I think courtesy is an emotion, not just a physical expression. And I think people feel it, not just hear it. And I think it may be just as simple as that.
Feel free to disagree with any of the statements I'm going to make because sometimes I don't know how controversial they are. So I read a quote recently that really clicked very nicely into my own personal worldview and thinking about this stuff. The quote was that peace can't happen between parties until power is balanced. And so when I look at the world, or at least just America, and I think about power relationships, I see Christians as having more systemic socio-political power as more than Muslims or Jews. And so if that is true, given that that is true, how can Christians share power with Muslims or Jews in their faith communities or individually?
What's that? Yeah, I don't know.
It's a really good.
Well, it looks like they're looking at me. I was talking about that. That's yeah, that's right. Yeah, I like that. That's right. It's funny that you would ask that question because I was thinking about that approaching this event and in this event. Of the position that I hold in our society as a white Christian male. And that is a particular position. And I thought about that specifically.
One thing I would add, because I think it's a great question, is I think the lack of power extends beyond just this characterization that Christians have power. I think that there are, the fact that we are in this room together to want to learn from one another, yet the world is closing its ears to the fact that we're here. We did have one media outlet here, I think it was a Spanish media outlet, but no one else, to my knowledge. That takes away our power to try to even out the narrative, that we still have a right to call ourselves the United States of America. Whereas when you do turn on the television, it seems like a divided States of America. And I think then really the way to tip the scales is to find a way to give that platform to those that are in this room or on the stage that are calling people towards understanding. I'm not here to convert anybody. I have the forms if anyone sits down. That was a bad joke. It's a bad joke. I understand. That was risky. But it's just about, breaking the ice and then breaking bread hopefully someday as well. And I think if more and more people can hear that, wow, that happened and it wasn't so bad, and even tough questions were asked and honest answers were given, maybe that's how power can be shared because the narrative is shared.
Thank you. Najee, we have a question here.
A couple of things. First of all, thank you for this. The last time I saw a forum along this line was on, I think it was NBC shortly after 9/11, and there was a rabbi and a Christian minister, several Christian ministers, Catholic priests, Muslim clerics, talking with children and trying to explain to them what had happened and the fact that it wasn't a religion or anything that did this. And it was one of the best things. I'd like to see us go beyond this, expand this. Because I think one of the things that I've learned, I realized shortly after 9/11 that I had grown up in the Christian community. Of course, the Old Testament, I thought I knew quite a bit about the Judaism, but I realized I really didn't know a thing about Islam. So I've made a point of trying to find out and learn because I couldn't understand why this would happen. And of course, I realized as I've studied and learned more about Islam that Islam has nothing to do with the people that did this. It's just, these people are just terrorists. But the one thing I think we need to keep in mind is that I see is there's a tendency to think, whichever religion we are, that we're better than everybody else. And no one is better than anybody else. It doesn't matter what you believe, what your religion is. We're all equal in God's eyes. And the other thing is to keep in mind, I keep hearing stories about, oh, let's throw everybody out that's part of that group or this group. And my response to people that say that is, but if you do that and you throw it out because of the bad ones, you're going to regret the fact that you didn't have the opportunity to experience and learn from the good ones. And that's what I think we need to concentrate on, is learning from those that are different, that are the good ones, and learn how to live together. Plus, I think all three religions need to spend more time sharing all three religions with everyone. That way we get to know more about what each believes and how we can be, how we're all together in God. Thank you.
I guess my question is kind of really, what are the next steps at this point? I mean, we've started the conversation today, which is great. And I guess also from a personal perspective, for me would be, how could I get involved in being a part of some of those steps? And whether it's in coalitions or whatnot, because I think it's important to have a wide variety of people coming together to continue these conversations. And are there groups out there that are doing this that I can get involved with? Are there ways that we can continue these conversations? How do we do that?
Yeah, I'll say just a word about that. Where is Cheryl Kimberling? Where are you, Cheryl? Somebody give her a mic, because Cheryl, you can share about the work of Multicultural Alliance just a bit, because I think that would be a helpful answer to that. And also, Chuck, you might talk about the next things that we've got planned. Okay.
Thank you so much. Our organization used to be the National Conference of Christians and Jews, and we separated about 10 years ago, really feeling like that those relationships between Protestants, Catholics, and Jews was much improved, and that there were other groups that we really ought to reach out to and offer shared experiences and educational opportunities. And so one of the programs that we do is Interfaith Dialogue. In fact, Dr. Brewster was with us 10 years ago when we did a pilot program of clergy and members from congregations. And as I'm standing here, I'm looking out and seeing many of you all who are part of our partners and part of our participants. I've got board members here and Interfaith Dialogue facilitators, and so it's great to be among people that are like-minded. Anyway, we have Interfaith Dialogue sessions that meet for 6 weeks, 2 hours a week, and we deal with topics that relate to people's faith traditions. It's not an opportunity to proselytize, it's an opportunity to build real genuine and honest relationships with people. And so we probably have, well, we've done this for 10 years, and we do about 3 or 4 a year. We have a web page. If you have interest in participating with us, we are the Multicultural Alliance, and our web page is MCA, and then Texas, TEXAS.com. We've got forms that you can sign up and get involved, and we will definitely reach out to you. Besides the Interfaith Dialogues, we have a one-night event called Table Talk, where we bring people together to share a meal and have conversation and get better acquainted with each other. We do that in one of two ways. We bring people together that are part of our organization, and nobody really knows anybody at the table, and we've also then done groups of people. We've done Sunday school classes or women's circle groups, or I had a woman that had a birthday party for her friends, and she had a table talk, and we came and did that. But our mission is to build inclusive communities, and with that, we hope to help eradicate bigotry and prejudice. Okay, thank you.
We have somebody in the very back who wants to talk, and then we have a couple of people toward the front. Yes, sir, in the red.
Assalamu alaikum. This is an Islamic greeting that simply means peace be on you. My name is Bilal Bajwa, and my question is to each one of the speakers. Given that the biggest calamity that happened to the humankind was the tens of millions of people that died in the World War I and then World War II, and now we have a World War III looming upon us through events in Syria and some other parts of the world. And we also know that Russia has started to reemerge, and China is starting to assert outside of its boundaries through events in the South China Sea. So and the United States being the world superpower, if the president of our country calls upon you to ask for advice based on what the scripture says, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran, what would be your advice to the president?
Look at the time. Got to go. Thanks for everyone for coming. Appreciate your time. Rabwah, you want to go first?
I hadn't really prepared for that situation, and I doubt it will happen, but thank you for asking, regardless of who wins. I don't know.
Maybe if I can add to that, I wouldn't take away anything that the rabbi just said. In the event, we already had our first Muslim president.
All the jokes we can't make.
And he didn't call on me, so what are the chances the next one's going to? But if he or she does, I think the underlying message will be even what the pastor had spoken about, which is this concept of justice and peace. That, as you said, with the United States being a superpower, we exert a lot of influence around the world. And we have the opportunity to act in our vested interests or in the interests of the world and world security and safety. And sometimes they're at odds with one another. Maybe acting in a certain way will increase our gas prices, but ultimately would be better for the world. And so I think that the underlying thing I would suggest is that to have justice as the baseline principle. I mean, that's in the Quran as well. When the Quran speaks to those in authority and says, when you judge between people, judge with justice. The Arabic word adl, and what adl means is not just to be just and fair, but the highest form, absolute justice. Where in the Quran it says, even if you have to incriminate your own family and your own people, do so if that's the just thing to do, if that's truthful. And so that's what I would suggest is not to just rob people of their resources, not to just pick and choose our battles because what's best for us, but to be just so that we can finally reemerge as just arbiters in even other people's affairs.
Thank you.
Well, I would just tell the president to call these guys.
All right. Yes, ma'am. I think Najim has given a mic to this lady here. Yes, this one. This lady and then this lady. This woman I've skipped over her several times, but I know it's wonderful that y'all are eager to talk. That's always a great sign.
I just wanted to address your question. There are two groups, which is what Deborah was going to talk about. There's a Daughters of Abraham group, and there's a Brothers of Abraham group, and there's several chapters. Sons of Abraham, and there's several chapters. And it's Muslim Christians and Jewish women that meet, and we develop an understanding of each other's religions. And we meet once a month. In Fort Worth, it's the last Wednesday morning, and we rotate churches or synagogues or mosques and discuss issues so that we can understand, which helps develop peace. And then we go and talk to various churches as a 3-person panel so that they can understand. So I just wanted to bring that up. If anybody's interested, I'm sure Deborah would answer it. There's 3 other ladies beside myself that are sitting here, and I don't know who else. There's some people in the back.
Yeah, there's a bunch of us around here. So we have meeting. There's a group in Dallas. There's a group in Fort Worth. We have a group in Colleyville. So if you want to get involved, it's Muslims, Jews, and Christians from all denominations, and we'd love to have you. And we do talk, and we do dialogue, and we do break bread, and we support each other, and we are sisters together. So we would love to see more people come. So we have a website. So Daughters of Abraham of Texas, if you look up our website, Carol, anybody who's a member could tell you about us. Some of us are all, there are other daughters of members who are also members of the Multicultural Alliance. I know Adina is, and I don't think she's here today. So there are people.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
If I could add one thing, I know Najim standing over there is about to start organizing what he calls coffee, cake, and true Islam. It's going to be just basically a weekly open house at any center, really, or we could just do it at a coffee shop, just to give people an opportunity to talk to somebody who is adherent of Islam. Or if you just want coffee and cake, that's also the fastest way to someone's heart through their stomach, right? And so another opportunity. Looks like there's a lot of great activities going on here in the Fort Worth area, so hopefully people can capitalize on that.
That's very helpful. Thank you. We have time for one more question, if it's brief.
Okay. First, in honorable greetings, Shalom Achem, and honor to the nation of Israel. Peace of Christ be with you. Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar. One of my doctoral students is a Nigerian and was kidnapped as a child by Boko Haram from a predominantly Christian village in Nigeria. And we've been working on developing theories about radicalization that could be helpful in intervention to stop radicalization across religions, including Christian American young males who are being radicalized into neo-Nazi groups and into survivalist groups. One of the questions we have in looking at developing that theory is looking at the responsibility that all of us have to our young adult males of all religions, some of whom are refugees in this country across states, what we can do to stop their radicalization, particularly those who are poor and marginalized in the states in which they are residing.
I want to respond to that. How do we respond to radicalization?
I think most people are looking at me. No, that's fine. And this is a real question, and it's a real issue that we've been trying to tackle. I can explain at least our experiences within the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. We even started a program called Stop the Crisis, because it's a play on word. The word ISIS is in crisis, where our youth organization was tackling this issue of how do we save the young men in particular from this path of radicalization, knowing that it's a continuum. Someone doesn't wake up one day and they're radical. There's warning signs. There's a path they follow. And within our community, one of the things we've done is because we kept being asked, "Hey, you guys you're the oldest Muslim organization here. You've been here since 1920. Never seen an act of violence from any of your 70 chapters around the country. What are you doing?" And so we sat for months and we established what we called a campaign that we called True Islam. And it's not true Muslim. We're not falling into the no true Scotsman fallacy. We know there are Muslims out there doing bad things. But what True Islam is, in the website trueislam.com, is we identify 11 principles that we believe differentiate between true Islam and the path of extremism. And each of those 11 principles, I think we believe that any Muslim who disagrees with doesn't make them a terrorist or a radical or an extremist, but it creates this crack in their foundation, their religious identity foundation, that can be easily exploited by groups like Boko Haram and ISIS to radicalize them. So things like True Islam advocates for freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the equality, empowerment, and education of women, that it calls for a non-violent jihad of yourself and of the pen, a separation of religion and state. And so we believe that anyone who disagrees, that's the dialogue we want to have. So, okay, out of 1 through 11, which one do you disagree with? Okay, number 3, let's have a dialogue and explain, let's talk about why you disagree with that. And that way we believe we can try to cut that off in the past, to explain to them how we can protect ourselves and protect our national security. So I think that those type of efforts to do that outreach and give people an outlet to find out an airing of grievances, because all the experts, like the John Hogan, I think, is the former director of the Center for the Study of Terrorism at Penn State, or is it UPenn? And yeah, they come up with a list of what are the warning signs that lead towards terrorism or extremism. And far below any other thing is religion or even a political ideology. It talks about being a loner. It talks about not having an outlet, people who are disenfranchised, this desire to be part of something greater than yourself, seeking retribution and how to elevate yourself from after you've been treated as weak. All of these things, promises of adventure, sexual promises, there's economic and financial promises, those type of things. And I think if we tackle those and work with those centers, maybe we can come up with some actual good programs.
Thank you. So I want to thank our 3 speakers, Rabbi Zimmerman, Reverend Brewster, and Mr. Zafar. Thank you. And I want to thank you as well. This has been a very lively, attentive group, and I appreciate all the wonderful questions and comments that came up. Now we're fixing to move into a time of eating, which we've talked about a lot today, and now we're going to actually do it. And I'd like to invite Najim Saqib to come up. And I want to thank, too, Najim and others who, like Chuck, who have helped to organize this event. This has been wonderful.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to now present some presents to our wonderful speakers and organizers who have immensely helped us to put this event together and given their valuable time. But first of all, I would like to invite Hari Zafar and Saeed Chaudhry to on the stage, please. So the first present we'd like to present it to Dr. Tim Brewster in gratitude and deep appreciation for all his efforts to spread the cause of peace. Dr. Brewster. The second present we'd like to present it to Rabbi Brian Zimmerman.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The third present, I would like to present it to Reverend Chuck Graff, who devoted immense amount of time to put this event together. Reverend Chuck Graff, please. The fourth award, I would like to present it to Dr. Rebecca Miles for the moderation of this event. And the fifth and the last award, we'd like to go to Dr. Jim Rilsberger for all his efforts towards peace. So that brings us to the conclusion of the event. We hope that you found the conference very informative and worthwhile. The primary goal of this conference was to bring together a collaborative discussion on the power of peace and the potential of our faith communities to influence our culture through words and actions grounded in peace. We believe that our diverse and dynamic group of speakers and panelists provided in-depth insight as well as actionable and practical tools of engagement. Your presence helped to make this event a great success, and your enthusiasm and positive spirit helped make our time together very productive. We wish you all the best and hope that you continue to carry the flag of peace, justice, and tolerance. We have some refreshments in the back. Please enjoy your fellowship time. Thank you very much.